It's essentially covering both speeches as though there are one, since really the same arguments were covered by both negative speakers. So let's begin on the top of the flow addressing the arguments that we've tagged as topicality. This was not addressed by the 1NR, but in the 2NC, he argued that the United States military is a term that is essential in the resolution. Now, I have a number of responses. The first response is that they're adding words to the resolution. The resolution says our foreign military commitments. It never specifies our military, but so long as it's a foreign commitment to a military, that's the key word in the resolution. That's what's important. Secondly, let me point out that they did not pull through their earlier arguments in the 1NC saying that it's not a significant change. This particular argument was dropped. My third and final response is no impact. Never once in their constructives did they give any argument why topicality is a voter issue in this debate round. We believe that the important thing is to actually take a look at the substantive policy changes in the debate. Let's move down to the next argument on the floor, where they stated that Afghanistan has to fund themselves. They can't continue to rely on American aid. I really just have two responses to this. The first is that it's simply not physically possible. According to the United States Institute for Peace in April 2012, my partner read this evidence earlier. It says that fiscal analysis conducted by the World Bank indicates that Afghanistan is unable to pay for the ENSF at anywhere near its existing or targeted size for the foreseeable future. This is what's important. In fact, the second response is that it completely overwhelms their budget. If they were to allocate their entire budget for the entire Afghanistan government to the ENSF, they still wouldn't be able to pay for it at its current funding levels. It's simply not feasible at the time because their economy is doing so poorly. They don't have the revenue necessary to do so. Now let's move on to the next line of argumentation, which was that addressing whether or not the Afghans will fill in. And when you point out will fill in the funding levels, they said, wouldn't they fill it in if the United States pulled it out? My response is simply pull through my partner's earlier arguments. They didn't address my partner's argument that the 1NC evidence was unrefuted, that the additional evidence was presented. They didn't respond to the impact argument or the argument that they never presented any evidence. At this point, this all flows through to the affirmative. Let's move down to the next argument, which was brought up in the 2NC, simply saying that it's a small amount of funding. Why would $2 billion have an impact? I have four responses, actually. The first, we provided military opinion from the generals on the ground. This is unrefuted. Secondly, we provided evidence from national security experts saying it's not a small amount, it has a very large impact. Third, we provided precedent showing that in Iraq, the same situation occurred and people and the insurgents had their ranks loosened because our allies defected to their ranks. The fourth and final response is we have none of this analysis on the side of the negative team. No evidence, no precedent, no history on their side. Let's move down to the impact arguments. Under impact number one, the human rights violation, they really repeated their earlier argument, simply saying that it's not human rights violations occur all the way around the world. My partner's arguments were left unrefuted. Once again, let me repeat them one more time to make sure that they make their way onto the ballot. The first is that they have an atrocious human rights record for the Taliban. In fact, the phrasing in the 1NC evidence was it's unparalleled in recent history, which means you can't compare it to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood's human rights abuses are nowhere near the level of the Taliban's. Secondly, it would be the United States' moral culpability, our fault if this actually occurred, because we had the opportunity to save the individuals' lives, and we let it go. And the third argument was that our other impact that was civil war was not addressed. So let's move down to the second impact of the terrorist safe havens. And the response that was given was simply that there are airstrikes that are capable of keeping Al-Qaeda at bay. And my partner responded by saying, we have 120,000 more troops that are able to carry out operations, counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations. And they said, sure, but the Americans are the ones who are in control of the airstrikes. Let me say a few things in response to that. The first is that that's absolutely true, and the United States is ending its combat role in 2014. We provided evidence in the 1NC making this statement. So we end those airstrikes in 2014. The only opportunity we have to stop the Taliban is through the ANSF. Secondly, the evidence that they read about the airstrikes was written in 2011, but the plan to cut the funding wasn't released until 2012, so it's outdated, doesn't take into account our evidence. Let's move down to the minor repair finally. They stated that our allies can simply make up for this loss of funding. Three responses. The first, no evidence stating that the allies would do that in the first place. Secondly, we cannot control the allies, we can't fiat them, we only have control over American military policy, and we solve that problem. Third and most importantly, if the negative team continues to take the position that it's not America's job to police Afghanistan, why would it be our allies' job? There's a contradiction in the philosophy of the negative side. Finally, let me just point out that at the end of the negative speech, they stated that the Afghanistan government is weak and that we shouldn't be overlooking them. Once again, we're not trying to reveal them, we're simply trying to keep the Taliban from coming back to power. For all these reasons, we believe an affirmative ballot is warranted.